Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, I'm so deeply grateful that you're here. And let's get right into it. Today, I would like to explore actions that make all the difference in terms of your well-being, in terms of improving your health, and really in terms of improving any area of your life. I don't think there's any question that action is what moves your life in a direction. We cannot create meaningful change if we aren't willing to take action. Action matters. And not all action is created equal. When it comes to improving health, I see an awful lot of women spending a lot of time on actions that aren't really helping them to make the kind of meaningful change they want to be making. And sometimes the actions they're taking aren't really creating any kind of change at all. Maybe you can identify with that. So I want to go through some sort of clarifying aspects of actions that do make all the difference and give you some great questions to ask yourself when you are considering what the next right action is for you. So actions that make all the difference absolutely take into consideration the wholeness of your life. So what I mean by that is the other dimensions of your well-being outside of just physical health. And if you've been around the Grace and Grit block for a while, this is not new information for you. You know that I operate from the perspective that health is multidimensional. Physical health is one of many dimensions to the health story. We also have mental health, emotional health, relationship health, spiritual health. There's a lot of other pieces to the pie. And so often when we are considering improving something like our physical health, we often dismiss all the other dimensions. So we don't put it through the filter of, how is this going to affect my mental health? How is this going to affect my emotional health? How is this going to affect my relationships? And I specifically see this, of course, with the lose weight at any cost mentality. Sure, you can decide to take the action to only eat 500 calories a day. And I think it's really helpful and responsible to consider at what price that will come to your mental, emotional, and relationship health. When we consider actions that we want to commit to, I think it's also important to consider, do these actions make it possible for you to show up to your other values and priorities? I'll give you a really concrete example of this. I think many of you know that I studied very intensely with Ido Portal for several years, and it was amazing. And if I had no other parts to my life and all I wanted to do was focus on movement, I would still be training at that intensity. But the reason I actually ended up pulling out of that level of training is because it was costing me tremendously in other dimensions of my life that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. So I was training twice a day for an hour and a half to 2 hours at a time. And I'm a mother and I have a business and I have, other parts of my life that are equally important to me as my movement practice. And I got to a point where I really felt like this action, this commitment, was keeping me from giving the amount of myself I wanted to give in other areas of my life. So did I completely stop moving? No. Did I stop learning from Ito specifically? No. But I gave myself permission to allow my training to look different. So one of the first questions I want to give you when you're considering the next right action for yourself is not only does this make sense to my physical health, but does this action make sense to my mental and emotional health? And if it doesn't, if it's going to cost you a lot in terms of those other areas of health, maybe you want to reconsider that action. I also think that actions that make all the difference keep you in your glorious state of whelm. My students will be very familiar with that term. This is a term I adopted from Susan David, who wrote Emotional Agility. And she talks about the importance of being challenged as a human. We actually thrive when we are challenged. But when we're over-challenged, meaning we're overwhelmed, we just shut down. And if we're under-challenged, we stagnate. So we don't want to be over-challenged. We don't want to be under-challenged. We just want to be in a happy state of feeling challenged. So not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, but in what she terms as a beautiful state of whelm. And I see a lot of people, especially along their health journey, committing to actions that are so big and feel so challenging that they're literally paralyzed to show up to execute them at all. And, I work with a lot of women who maybe haven't worked out in many, many years. And in their head, they think, well, I need to get a gym membership. And maybe they do. Maybe they do get a gym membership. But that action is so big, and they have so many thoughts about it that they aren't necessarily managing, that they literally never go to the gym. So not only are they spending money that they aren't getting value from, but they're also not improving their physical health because they're not showing up to do their workouts. So that decision for some women will push them into a state of overwhelm. So what I invite them to do is, how can we make this more whelming, right? How can we make this challenging, but not so challenging that you aren't going to show up? And of course, there's a lot of answers to that, right? Maybe they go take a class with their friend. Maybe they set up a home gym. Maybe they do a workout video on YouTube or something of that nature where they're in the privacy of their own home. Now, does it mean they stay there forever? No. It just means they're giving themselves permission to start with a more subtle challenge that is certainly going to help them make progress and allows them to show up in some way. Another example, right now, currently inside the Rumble and Rise membership site, we are working on improving our relationship with sugar. And one of the things that came up in this month is a lot of members saying what they want their relationship with sugar to be is one where they can moderate. So they don't want to completely give up sugar. They want to feel like they can have a little bit, but they also feel in control when they have a little bit. Now, there's a lot in that I'm not going to unpack here because it literally would just take too long. But the thing I do want to mention here is that maybe removing all sugar from your diet just feels way too overwhelming to you. And it just makes you want to eat more sugar, because when you feel overwhelmed, we tend to buffer. So maybe what you commit to, instead of removing all sugar, is, I'm really going to make an effort to pay more attention to the added sugars in my diet. Or maybe I'm going to make an effort to remove refined sugars from my diet, because not all added sugar is refined sugar. Added sugar can also be natural forms of sugar. So is this action that you are committing to, this next action, keeping you in your state of whelm? Is it winnable? Is it something that you will show up for? And if not, scale it back. In line with that, I also want to say that actions that make all the difference, and when I say all the difference, I mean help you make progress, are also actions that move you in a direction. Now, preferably that direction would be forward, right? We want to move in a forward direction, but that's not always the case. Sometimes when we take action that really counts, action that matters, it moves us away from where we wanted to go. And yes, you can define that as failure if that's useful to you. But it's also an opportunity to learn about what isn't working. So we need to be committing to actions that move us in a direction. Passive action is where we consume a lot of information. So we listen to the podcast, we read the book, we buy the new workout outfit, we go to the grocery store and buy all the healthy foods. But there's really no risk involved. So passive action feels really comfortable because it doesn't challenge you. So there's no movement. It's something you do because it's comfortable. And sure, you might rationalize that you're doing it because it's moving you in a direction. But when that's all you do, you only listen to the podcast, but you don't apply what you learn. You only read the book, but you don't apply what you learn. You go to the grocery store and buy the groceries, but you order out all your food for the week. None of that is going to move you in the direction of progress. So that's why we call it passive action. The other alternative is you take massive action. Now, massive action does not mean you take gigantic action. It means that you take risk. You take action that risks failure. So you decide tonight you are going to cook a new healthy recipe with those groceries you bought. You decide that you're going to take an element or two that you learned on the podcast and you're going to actually apply them to your life today. You're not just going to learn about exercise, you're going to start exercising. So passive action is consuming. Massive action is applying what you consume. And again, I've said it a couple times, but I just want to make it really clear that action that makes all the difference is always going to ask you to risk failing. And we don't like failing, which is one of the big reasons why we stay in this stagnant place of taking a lot of passive action. Passive action just stagnates you. It does not move you anywhere. And while it feels really comfortable, it eventually starts to feel really terrible because you're not progressing. You're not moving anywhere. So 2 questions that I would really encourage you to consider when you're thinking about your next right action to take. Does this action make me a little bit uncomfortable? And simultaneously, does it feel winnable? Because baked into that question is, are you taking massive action? Are you taking action that counts, that moves you somewhere? And are you staying in that state of whelm? You can do both. I encourage you to do both. Actions that make all the difference are also sustainable, meaning we can consistently show up for them. They are repeatable over long periods of time. And things that are repeatable tend to be very simple in nature. So if you're getting super complicated with your diet, right? You're removing entire food groups, you're calculating, every macronutrient level. I'm not saying there aren't maybe periods of your life where those levels of discipline may be helpful. But does that level of discipline make sense to your life right now? Can you sustain this action for the next several months? And in many cases, can you sustain this action for the rest of your life? Because whatever outcome you achieve, if it's a byproduct of that action, you're going to have to keep up that action to maintain the outcome. So is this action sustainable? Is it something that I can consistently show up for over long periods of time? Or is it so big? Is this such an overwhelming action that I might be able to commit to a few weeks or a few months, but then I'm going to throw in the towel? And do you like your reasons? Because maybe if you know you're going to throw in the towel in a few months and that's okay with you, maybe you do want to take that action. Actions that make all the difference are also typically things that we resist the most. This is something that we don't necessarily like to admit to ourselves, but it's really true. Think about it. The reason why you resist anything is because it's uncomfortable. And the very things that are going to improve your health, improve your life, are going to be uncomfortable. And if you are feeling super comfortable, I guarantee you're probably not changing right now. You know that. That is nothing new. You've heard that in many spaces and places. One of the conversations I often have with my 11-year-old son, when he says, Mom, I really need a new Nerf gun. My response is always, sweetheart, do you actually need it or do you want it? Because there's a difference. And the things that we really need to improve our health are not necessarily the things we really want in the moment. So I have a lot of clients who are incredibly busy, very productive humans, very successful humans, and they're exhausted and they are often experiencing a lot of discomfort, both emotionally and physically, because of the busyness of their lives. Asking these women to do more in terms of more exercise or, really dial up the discipline in their diet is surprisingly not very challenging for them. They love to be given, more to do because they're actually really good at executing. But what's really going to improve the lives of most of those women, I have found, is to pull back, to slow down, to spend more time on recovery and getting to know themselves. And do you think they want to do any of that? No, that is so uncomfortable. So it's easier to stay in this hustle, busyness cycle, even though that cycle is what's actually robbing them of their health. And so this is why I say the actions that will make all the difference are typically the things we resist the most. What are you resisting the most? If you're someone who will focus intently on your diet, but you keep refusing to go to the gym, I'm willing to bet if you start going to the gym, you're going to really see some serious progress. Or maybe the opposite is true for you. Maybe you are someone who goes to the gym every single day, but you have fierce resistance to dialing up the discipline around your food. I guarantee if you put focus on your food, you're going to see a world of difference. So asking yourself the question, what am I resisting right now? What is the thing that I don't want to do? That I know, I understand the value of it, but I keep resisting it. And why are you resisting it? I know why, but I want you to get clear on why. There's an emotion you're not willing to feel. Maybe you don't feel super experienced with this thing, so you have some self-doubt, or you feel like a beginner. You don't feel so skilled at it. Maybe you're afraid of failing. Maybe you're afraid of looking silly. I don't know what it is for you, but get clear on what you're unwilling to feel and start coaching yourself on being willing to feel that. Are you willing to feel like a beginner? Are you willing to feel unskilled to improve your life in this way? Because that's what it's going to require. Actions that make all the difference also require that you let go of some things that are no longer making a difference. So in the book Essentialism, which I've mentioned a few times on this podcast, I think it's a fantastic book. The author speaks to the concept of sunk cost bias, which is not his concept. This is a concept I think that is used a lot in the financial world. It's our tendency to continue investing in a losing proposition because of what it's already cost us. So when we've previously made an investment of time, of effort, or of money into a choice, we are likely to feel guilty or regretful if we don't follow through on that decision. So maybe you are someone, I used this example earlier in the podcast, who has a gym membership, but you never go. But you keep paying the gym membership because you feel guilty that you're not going. What would open up for you if you canceled that membership? Now, for some of you, you tell yourselves, well, I would just never move my body. But you're already not moving your body. How is it helping you to have a gym membership that you're not using? I see a lot of women clinging to past diets that worked for a short period of time and then, of course, didn't. But as they try to improve their health, what are they going back to time and time again? That extreme diet that worked for a very short period of time. I know you all know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, to end insanity, we have to identify the sunk cost bias. What are the things that we keep investing ourselves in that, if we're really honest with ourselves, we know aren't working? Another example would be clutter in our home. Keeping a lot of things around you because at one point they meant something to you, but they don't really mean so much now. So actions that make all the difference require that we cut our losses, that we let go of some ideas and some beliefs and some thoughts and some things that are no longer serving us. And cutting your losses does not mean that you aren't committed to improving your health. You cut your losses because you are committed to your health, because you open up those resources to dedicate to other things, the money, the time, the effort. Because even if you have that gym membership and you're not going to the gym, so you could argue, well, Courtney, I'm not spending time going to the gym. I'm not wasting time there because I'm not even going. No, but you're wasting time thinking about it and feeling guilty about it and having shame about it. So if you just gave yourself permission to cancel the gym membership, what might you be able to use those resources for in terms of improving your health moving forward? So again, cutting losses does not mean you aren't committed to your health. It means that you are committed to your health and you are willing to dedicate those resources that aren't really going towards anything useful to something else. So just asking yourself the question, where are my sunk cost biases? What are the things that I have invested in historically that are no longer serving me, that I'm also not really letting go of? So it's costing me time, energy, and maybe even money. Okay, so I want to do a quick little recap here. Actions that make all the difference. They take into consideration the wholeness of your life and who you are as a person. They keep you in your state of whelm. So they are actions that are winnable, that you feel with like 85 to 90% confidence that you can win at. If you don't have that level of confidence with something you're committing to in terms of a next action, you need to scale it back. Actions that make all the difference move you in a direction. They don't keep you stagnant. So they require that you risk doing something and risk failing. Actions that make all the difference are sustainable. You're able to repeat them over long periods of time. Actions that make all the difference are typically the things that we resist the most. And they require that you let go of some things that are no longer making a difference and maybe never did. I don't know who needed to hear that today. I feel like I need to hear all of my own podcasts. They're all great reminders to me. I hope there's a nugget in there for you. And if you need help applying this stuff, practicing these concepts, and really taking more action that moves you in the direction of progress, I would invite you to consider joining the Rumble and Rise community, because that's exactly what we do in that space. We make monthly commitments to ourselves. I give you tons of tools to not just manage your physiology, but to manage your thoughts and your emotions and your strategies in a way that you can be successful. There's tremendous support, not just from me, but from all the community members. More resources than you will ever need. There's so much in there that will help you tremendously, but not everything will always be applicable to you at your stage of your journey. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. You decide what to invest your time into based on what you're personally wrestling with. And of course, I give you a lot of guidance around that. So if you need a little extra support, if you want to try something new, I cannot say enough great things about this space. You can check it out at graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. That's it, my friends. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again next week. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.